When people tell you they want to destroy you, you should believe them. In the 1930s, as Adolf Hitler tore up treaties, annexed neighboring lands, and rearmed Germany in defiance of international agreements, much of Europe watched in anxious silence. The Rhineland was remilitarized in 1936 with barely a protest. Austria was swallowed in the Anschluss of 1938. Then came Czechoslovakia, ceded at Munich in the name of peace for our time. At each stage, Hitler gauged the resolve of the West and found it wanting. The price of appeasement was not peace, it was war, made more inevitable and more devastating by delay. As the Islamic Republic of Iran expanded its influence, armed proxies across the Middle East, and inched towards nuclear capability, Israel has found itself cast in a role no nation seeks, that of the lone voice insisting that the threat must be confronted. Not tomorrow, not at the last moment, but now. The language is different, the geography is different, but the structure of danger and denial is disturbingly familiar. To be clear, Iran's crimes and ideology are distinct, but the dynamic is recognizable. The world faces a regime with genocidal rhetoric, expansionist aims, and theocratic fervor, while many in the West plead for diplomacy as missiles fly and red lines fade. Like Winston Churchill in the late 1930s, Israel finds itself accused of warmongering, for warning of war and actually waging one. When Israel strikes Iranian military and nuclear infrastructure, it did not choose escalation. It has refused appeasement. For decades, Iran has worked meticulously to build an arc of armed influence across the Middle East, from Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, to Shiite militias in Iraq and the Houthis in Yemen. Tehran created a shadow empire of violence that projects power well beyond its borders. These are not rogue actors, they are Iranian instruments. The events of October 7th, when Hamas operatives launched the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, were not an isolated horror, but part of a regional strategy. That strategy was to encircle and weaken Israel through constant attrition, while shielding Iran itself behind plausible deniability and the illusion of diplomacy. Overlaying this was Iran's nuclear ambition. Despite years of inspections, negotiations, and brief moments of détente, the program marched on. Western powers spoke of breakout time and confidence-building measures, but Israel read Iran's intentions not through the lens of bureaucratic optimism, but through bitter historical experience. When a regime funds militias that chant death to Israel, death to America, plots attacking European cities, and build long-range missile systems whilst enriching uranium far beyond civilian needs, taking them at their word is not prudence, it's delusion. Churchill once remarked that the malice of the wicked was reinforced by the weakness of the virtuous. It is the same weakness, masked as restraint, that Iran is banking on today. In global capitals, political leaders urge Israel to de-escalate, to trust the process, to give diplomacy one more chance. But diplomacy cannot function when one party operates in bad faith and the other in naivety. Peace is not the product of dialogue alone. It is the consequence of credible deterrence. And deterrence without action is simply noise. It is also important to understand that Israel's actions are not driven by hubris or adventurism. This is a nation founded by the survivors of genocide, whose national doctrine is shaped by the understanding that existential threats must never be underestimated. Israeli intelligence, military planning, and national strategy are not driven by ideology, but by necessity. A nuclear-armed Iran with a declared goal of erasing the Zionist entity from the map is not a theoretical risk. It is a countdown. Of course, the risks of military action are real. Iran has retaliated by unleashing missiles on civilian targets, retaliating through its proxies, disrupting shipping in the Gulf, and igniting broader conflict. These dangers are grave, but so is the danger of inaction. A nuclear Iran would shift the strategic balance of the region and the world permanently. It would trigger proliferation across the Gulf and creating an umbrella under which Iran could escalate proxy wars with near impunity. Israel's strikes are not merely defensive. They are a last effort to prevent a far worse war. This is not an argument for blind support of Israeli policy, nor a denial of the complex realities on the ground. But in the face of a regime that blends apocalyptic theology with regional militarism, Israel's position deserves recognition as a warning, one that the world has heard before and tragically ignored. When Churchill stood alone in the 1930s, he was ridiculed as a warmonger, a relic of an earlier imperial age. But when the bombs fell over London, his lonely foresight became a nation's salvation. Today, Israel does not seek to be Churchill. History has a way of choosing its actors. The lessons of the 20th century is not that war should be welcomed. It shouldn't. It is that refusing to confront evil does not prevent it. It empowers it. And when a regime like Iran continues its march unchecked, it is not only Israel that is at risk, but the entire architecture of international order. Churchill once said, "To each there comes in their lifetime a moment when they are figuratively tapped on the shoulder and asked to do something specific to their time." Israel now has been tapped. It is doing what it must. The question is whether the rest of the world will stand with it or repeat the silence that once paved the road to war.